Welcome, everyone. This is David Morgan from themorganreport.com, and we are going to talk about silver. It's the Silver Investment Forum in June 2021. Well, before we get started, I'm going to get a little bit of humor, but not so much about silver. So here we are over here. If you see my laser pointer, we've gone up from the $5 level up to about 28. And then we're going to make this leap over here and get in the final phase and go all the way up to there. So I'm looking for an exponential move. Many of you heard me talk about 90% of the move comes in the last 10% of the time. That may or may not be true, but the general idea is that's how markets work, especially during the trying times that we have in the financial markets. But we're going to focus mostly on companies. So let's get to it. I want to thank everyone involved, and I also want to thank, of course, the Metals Investors Forum for doing something that's silver focused, which in my view doesn't quite get enough attention as far as the amount of usefulness it has in a modern technological society. So I'm going to go through the World Silver Survey 2021. Most of these graphics are taken from there. And of course, we also tell you the source here at the bottom, Metals Focus and Bloomberg on this first one, global supply. So you can see from 2011 through to current day, we have basically had a flat to slightly tapering off global silver supply. And there's lots of reasons for that. I do not believe we're at peak silver, knowing some of these miners that we're going to be interviewing, but we could be close. Silver, according to the United States Geological Survey, will be the first to go off the periodic table. That's just a fancy way of saying we could, in theory, run out of silver, but there's a lot of variables around that. At $28 silver, you might be out, but if at $158 silver, that mine that looked really impossible to mine economically becomes viable. So lots of factors, but we are mining at a lower grade historically than we did, let's say, 100 years ago, 50 years ago. All right, so this one is very interesting. And even though it's kind of a simple graphic, what this shows is the amount of photovoltaic installation from basically 2019 projected out to 2025, where it finally starts to flatten out. But the amount of solar that is being used throughout the world continues to increase. And I read the Metals Focus study back in 2010. Jessica Cross did that one, and her projection was about 100 million ounces of silver on an annual basis for photovoltaics. Didn't quite get to that level because the efficiency in solar panels has doubled twice. We're getting about as much energy or electricity conversion, I should say, per panel for about 1/4 the amount of silver that was in the original panels. I think we're getting pretty close to the limit, but there could be a technological breakthrough. It'll make a big thing out of it. But and you can see light duty vehicle production also moves up. There's a lot more to say about that. And just a bit of a shameless plug, but on my mastermind series, I'm going to interview the gentleman that wrote this study and go do a deep dive on silver's industrial usage over the next decade, which he projects, and I won't go against it. 80% of the silver market in 10 years will be used for industrial purposes. All right, so COVID disruptions. What we saw was a lot of people moving into the investment side of silver. We had the largest increase ever into ETFs or ETPs, exchange traded products, about 350 million ounces by exchange traded funds. On top of that, an extremely robust retail market of about 200 million ounces. You add the two, I could do that arithmetic. We're looking at about 550 million ounces in 2020 went into silver as an investment. That's greater than the amount used in industrial applications. So huge spike, and I think it will continue. So far from the data I've seen, we're pretty close. So people are waking up, institutions are waking up, pension funds really haven't, but there's a lot of money sitting on the sidelines in the stock market, the bond market, that could potentially come into the silver market. And what that would do to the mining shares is almost beyond description, but I don't want to get myself too excited here. I'm trying to just stick to the data and let you take a look. This is the top 20 silver companies. Well, let me restate that. This is the top 20 silver producing companies, and you will see in this list of 20 how few are actually silver companies. And what do I mean? I mean that the bottom line, at least 50% or greater of the revenues come through because of silver. Fresnillo is, KGHM is, Glencore not really, Newmont not really, Codelco not really, Southern Copper not really, Polymet no, Pan American. So we're halfway down the list, and we're finally hitting like the third company that's basically a silver company. Hecla right behind them. Buenaventura, I would say yes. Industrias Españolas, of course. Moving down, you can see First Majestic, although it's probably one of the better known companies, really isn't that high up on the list. It certainly produces more silver on an annual basis than I purchased, but nonetheless, it's not, it's in there. It's certainly there. Yamana, not really. Tech, not really. And Hochschild, not really. So a lot of this silver comes as we all know, as a byproduct of mining. 25% comes from copper mining. 13% of the silver market's a result of gold mining. And the other 35% as a result of both base metal, lead and zinc mining. And let me just pause here for something housekeeping wise. I forgot to say at the beginning, everyone that's on this can put their question into the chat box, the Q&A, and we will go through those questions. So just if you could have the courtesy of typing maybe the first name or the company name of who you have the question for. Of course, some will be for me, but I like to focus mostly on the companies, but I'm sure I may generate a few questions. So mine production, as you can see over the last decade, it really peaked out about 2015-16. It's been coming down according to the Silver Institute's Silver Survey, which was written primarily by Metals Focus. We should rebound rather significantly this year. I'm going to just wait and see. I'm not sure how much will come back. I think we'll outproduce what we did in 2020 and 2021, but I'm not certain it'll be substantial. But again, we'll see. Recycling has been flat. There's a real need, in my view, to recycle more. And of course, I am biased because one of the companies we have as a rank speculation, I think it's an asymmetrical trade, is involved with electronic waste. And it's really an interesting technology. I don't want to pitch it too hard, but it's been flat. I think it can be improved. And I think as the silver price goes up and this push for green energy and sustainability and the ESG and everything else that's going on in our industry, you'll start to see that. I'll predict it come up rather significantly over the next 5 to 10 years. The bullion trade, it's interesting to see how much is imported here. India, which was huge, fell off a cliff. And I wanted to include this slide and show you how little was imported in the last quarter of 2020. And they're notoriously huge buyers of silver. And why is that? Excuse my analysis, but here it is. The silver price in rupee was the highest it's been in probably forever. And so if you are not knowing the difference between money and currency, or you've saved silver and it's at a very high price, you are going to be prompted to sell, which is what happened. So the reason for that, which I always ask the why, if I could figure it out, I'm very happy, because sometimes you can't, is because the rupee price was so extremely high, there basically was no imports, exports. They were selling their silver for cash. All right, global industrial demand. Although it is about 50% of the market, you can see it's kind of been flat for the last decade. And as I said a moment ago, and telling you about my mastermind service, where we'll go through the projection for the next decade, it will start to move up again. And I do believe that's true. It's significant, but as I said, relatively flat, which is a little bit surprising. Unless you look at these studies, you may be under the misconception that silver, every year there's an increase in industrial use, and really is not the case at this time. So the potential in green energy, I've already mentioned that a few times. We're seeing the photovoltaic demand and cell loadings have been increasing as it shows, and that will continue. So this, you can't even read it. There's three things on this slide that talk about silver's new emerging uses. You've got the silver powder. So you're going to be seeing the soldering industry is going to have to do with lead. You're going to see silver substitute for that. Is it big? No, it's small, but it's in many applications. So it will demand more silver. Then you've got 5G, which I've talked about, and I don't hear anyone else talking about it. Not to make a huge thing out of it, but when the 5G becomes enabled, let's say on a global basis, where it's pervasive and it's the norm, you will see a lot of people that will get rid of their phones and buy a new phone. Is there a lot of silver in a cell phone? No, but when you're talking about 2 billion purchased on an annual basis, you can kind of catch my drift. And the last one is induction chargers, which I can't read that fine print, but it's another area where there will be significant increase in the demand for silver. All right, silverware fabrication fell off a cliff in 2020, which makes sense with the COVID, not so many weddings, other things to do with your money, on and on. I don't pay a lot of attention to this. I mean, it's part of the study. If I read this correctly, and like I said, I read this survey once. If I remember correctly, the amount of silverware recycled was about equal to the amount of silverware shown in this chart, about 22 million ounces, which I find a bit amusing, meaning that as much got put into commercial bar form as was bought last year. So a net zero, really. So I've talked about it many, many times that I think the biggest move in silver is ahead for a variety of reasons. And again, I want to emphasize that if we see what I expect to see, or even half or a quarter as good as I anticipate, and believe me, I'm not the wild one out there. I mean, there are people saying $200 silver, $600 silver, $1,000 silver. I'm not saying anything close to that. However, what I am stating is I think the biggest part of the move is ahead of us. I think what will happen in a short duration of time, meaning probably the next 3 years, and that a way to really gain leverage after you have your, let's say, modestly important physical position is to get leverage through the mining sector, which is, of course, what we focus on. This is just proof that 90% of the move came in the last 10% of the time. If you were a rank speculator, bought silver at an all-time high of $6 an ounce in January 1979, you could have cashed out in January 1980 for over 800% gain. So selfish plug, there it is, the Morgan Report. And we've been publishing for about 22 years. Pretty proud of it. Have we gotten every stock pick correct? No, we haven't. But I divided up to protect investors that really are serious, and that's big money in the big companies, medium money in the medium companies, and we speculate, bet a little to win a lot on the more speculative type of companies. So I think we're pretty close. Follow me. If you really want to follow my thinking on the economy, it's best to go to my Twitter account, which is at SilverGuru22. I do have a YouTube channel, but I also have a blog. It's on the blog. We post it on the YouTube channel.